This is PNE Pod, the official podcast of the one and only Preston North End Football Club. Make sure you hit subscribe or follow, and that way, whenever we release a new episode, you'll be notified straight away. My name's Niall McCorn.
And I'm Neil Mellor. We'll be talking to some North End legends, some current first team players, some famous fans of PNE, and also a few former teammates of mine.
When you say the name Alan Kelly, Mells, you just think Preston North End. Alan Kelly Sr., an absolute legend. The town name's named after him. But today, we're speaking to Alan Kelly Jr., who also has his own storied history with the football club.
Yeah, I mean, Alan Kelly Sr., the stand, one of the greatest ever goalkeepers to play for North End. And for his lad, Alan, to play for North End as well, it was really interesting to hear his upbringing, what it was like for him. He didn't start out as a goalkeeper. Listen to what position he did actually play when he was younger. But yeah, some great stories he had to tell.
And of course, we've heard a lot on PNE Pod over the last few weeks and months about that plastic pitch at Deepdale. For outfield players was tough, but for a goalkeeper to beat yourself up diving around on that must have been horrible.
Horrible. I'm glad I didn't have to play on that. But yeah, he tells us all about that, the injuries he's had, and playing on that pitch, of course.
Played in the Premier League too, with Sheffield United against some unbelievable opponents like Cantona and Shearer and Giggs.
Yep, all those. Internationally as well for Ireland. He talks about the World Cups he's played at, which shirts he's got off teammates, off opposition players as well.
Yeah, and he's been chilling out with Carlo Ancelotti as well recently, which isn't too bad. Of course, he's currently the goalkeeping coach at Everton. But without further ado, let's get straight into our chat with Alan Kelly Jr.
I think of that generation, and I think particularly with me, it was like, you're the man on the pitch, you're the number one, you're the man who's going to be stood in that position. You have to make the decisions, so you have to work it out. You have to work out what works for you as a goalkeeper. With no goalkeeping coaches at the time. I didn't have a goalkeeping coach for the first 7 years of my professional career.
But would you bounce ideas off him and say, Dad, you know, in this sort of position, would you ask him advice for certain situations as a goalkeeper, crosses, shots, 1v1s, decision making, that sort of thing?
Not to the degree you're thinking about.
No.
My dad had 4 principles in goalkeeping, and I've used these for the last 20 years in my goalkeeping coaching. You know, and it was, first is your start position. So if you're not in and around the right start position, you're not going to give yourself the best chance of being able to make the goalkeeping action to save. You've got to judge the flight and pace of the ball. So is it a cross, is it a shot, is it a through ball, whatever it may be. Then you've got to make the right decision. Is it a punch, is it a catch? Do I come outside my box, do I drop off? And then you've got to be quick enough to deal with it both in your head and then with your action.
So he gave you those
he called it the 4 principles of goalkeeping. Yeah. And he said, if you make a mistake, or if there's an error, or if there's a goal, you'll be able to look at one of those 4 principles and say, yeah, I wasn't in the right start position. I didn't make the right decision from the flight of the ball. I should have caught that instead of punching it. I should have parried that instead of trying to catch it. So really, that was the full basis of what he'd carried himself through his career, and what he practiced and preached as a goalkeeping coach as well. So I always had that. And again, in some ways it sounds hard when you say, go and find out, son, you go and work it out, you go and find your own way, you go and find out what works for you. But in a way that it empowers you to go and think, right, well, okay, then that's fine. And there was no problem with it. You know, it's like my son now, or people you might overcoach sometimes. But in a way I found that as a gift, him saying, no, go on, work it out. Obviously someone has said, we trust you. There's your contract. There's professional football. We trust you. Now go out and work it out. And the quicker you work it out, the quicker you'll rise. Sounds harsh.
And you did work it out pretty quickly.
Well, you had to, yeah. You had to.
And goalkeeping's changed actually quite a lot. So it's interesting that you still keep those 4 pillars of goalkeeping as you described them, when we see so much more about playing out from the back, goalkeepers being good with their feet. But even with that sort of tacked on to the modern goalkeeper, you still need to be solid in those 4 areas, otherwise you're going to fall down somewhere else.
Still the fundamentals, aren't they?
Yeah.
But obviously I'm involved in the modern game as well. I was involved in 92 when the back pass rule came in. So again, another variation, another trend that you had to get used to, another rule change. But
that was a big rule change.
It was. I was only saying the other day about that. There was a lot of keepers who fell by the wayside because they didn't have the required skills or techniques or actions to be able to deal with that. And it was immediate. There was no sort of introduction to it. It was immediate, bang. You now can't use your hands in this situation. And I think I was probably lucky in some ways that I had that outfield experience up to 16. So you know, it came easier and better to me than it did do to maybe some of the older goalkeepers of that generation. But it was a real culture shock. But in the modern game, 80% of a goalkeeper's actions in a game will be distributions. You know, and we spoke about Jordan Pickford before. He probably averages 50 actions in a game. That's like every goalkeeping action you can think of with a ball in hand or ball at your feet. He'll have 50 of those in each game, and 80% of those are distributions. So you're right, it's a massive part of the game.
And what about gloves and equipment and stuff like that? That's changed loads, even in 10 years, let alone since from when you started to now.
Huge. Well, I was looking at the 1964 FA Cup final, and my dad wasn't wearing gloves. I remember Simon Farmouth, I was a goalkeeper with him at Preston back in between 1990 and 92.
He was my physio.
Well, yeah, and he's great physio as well. Yeah, he was the last goalkeeper I saw not to wear gloves. So on a nice dry day, he'd just strap his wrists up and he'd go out just with his, you know, the feel of the glove. And it's funny, like to this day, always, you know, and the lads are going, they might drop a ball and they go, "It's me gloves." Yeah, it's what's inside the gloves that matter, you know. And
so you always wore gloves.
But I always wore gloves, yeah. My first season, so in 85, 86, when I made my debut, my dad was the goalkeeping coach at Everton. So we had Neville Southall, Bobby Mims, people like that. And he came home with a pair of gloves once, and Sondiko once from Neville. He went, "Neville's give you those." Oh, brilliant. Put them on. There was holes in all the fingers. He'd worn them out that much, you know what I mean? And I went, I'll still take 70-80% grip on that, you know, rather than nothing. So my first game was wearing a pair of Neville Southall's used gloves that had holes in the fingers, you know what I mean? And some of the fans might say, yeah, you can tell they had holes in the fingers, but...
It's such a specialist position, though, goalkeeper. People are always looking for margins. We've seen goalkeepers in the Premier League recently use Vaseline and things like that to find that extra edge.
Fantastic. I wish we thought of that 30, 40 years ago. Brilliant. Any young goalkeeper, especially on a wet day, you know, if you've got some Vaseline or what have you, just put a little dab on your gloves, rub it in, bang. It dramatically changes the effect and the catch of the glove, makes them more confident. You know, that's what it's all about as well, being confident, especially on a wet day. But yeah, first person I probably saw do that was Kasper Schmeichel. And so since that time, he started bringing in and people thought, what are they doing? And yeah, a little dab on. When I was goalkeeping coach with Jordan, so last 6 volleys hit them at him, he's put the Vaseline's gone in his glove. By the time it came back, my hands are so soft now. I used to have workers' hands, but all the Vaseline I keep getting on them, it's unbelievable. But yeah, it's a massive trend, but it's a trend that works, in my opinion.
Getting a free manicure off Jordan Pickford.
Looking at now, you know what I mean?
Going back to your time at North End as a player, you said that one stage finished 91st out of 92 Football League clubs, but you also did have success with North End in the 86-87 season, runners-up in Division 4. So what was that like to experience promotion?
Oh, it was magnificent. A complete sea change in the club with John McGrath coming in and Les Chapman, assistant manager. But then the players that came in, Samuel Rice was the centre half, Frank Worthington was the centre forward, Les was playing in midfield. You know,
characters all over the
brilliant.
place.
Gary Brazil, Bob Atkins, Gary Swan. I can go on and name virtually the whole team. And I was speaking to Les at one of the dinners recently, and he worked in Man City under Mancini and Pep in the early years.
The kit man.
The kit man, yeah. But we've played 750 league games, managed Preston, was assistant manager to John McGrath. Wonderful character. So we finished 91st out of 92 league clubs in the season previous. John McGrath came in, plastic pitch went down in the summer. And then we went and played 5 at the back. It was incredible. And we played out from the back in the old 4th division. I rolled it out to Bob Atkins. Bob would step in. He would hit a diag out to Ronnie Hildersley, or he'd hit it out to Gary Brazil. You'd have a third man run from Gary Swan. Then John Thomas would latch on centre forward. You won't remember John, but a brilliant goal scorer. Tony Ellis as well. And we played champagne football.
In Division 4 from being 91st.
For me, when the first 13 games, I was told to shell it as far as I could go. And I was playing at Halifax at the Shea, and I hit a goal kick, and it's the longest I've ever hit my half. And I thought, yeah, that'll do. It's gone 75 metres. It's literally done an orbit and come down. And I thought, yeah, brilliant. And then literally within, the 14th game, which would have been the season after, I'm rolling it out. I'm getting the ball back to my feet. I'm picking out Mick Bennett. You know what I mean? It was just a complete sea change. And the Preston public, we went from, I think one of the games was 2,200, so we averaged 12,000 or 13,000 that season. And one of the games there was 19,000 on.
Brilliant.
You know, and I think when you go from the depth to then get success.
It's a promotion season, though, wasn't it, that season?
And it's promotion season,
yeah.
You know, and at the Flag Market, you know, on the steps of the Harris Museum, it's just what an absolute... And I'm 18 years old.
18. What was Big Sam like in front of you? Was he shouting at you?
Oh, unbelievable, yeah. Well, you know, that was part of the year where there was no coaches. On a Friday, we just play a five-a-side. And I was quite quick and it was decent passer of the ball. So Sam would say to me, you're playing alongside me. So in the five-a-sides on a Friday, the day before a game, I would play alongside him as the centre-back. I would do all the passing. He went, he said, I'll head it and I'll kick them. You just pass it out, son. You know what I mean? And then Frank Worthington. Frank was just one of the most mercurial players I've ever met in my life, both as a person and when he was on the pitch. And he used to take me after training and say, son, I need to do a few shots, I need to do this, what have you. And he'd just point where he's going to put the ball, bang, go in the top corner. He went, still got it, son? He was like nearly 40, I think, at the time, Frank. He had the little tash and he had the long hair, what have you, and he was just a remarkable human being. He was just, I don't know, it makes you smile. You probably tell when I'm talking about him, just, you know, fabulous human being. Him and Les were mates for 25 years, and some of the stories that he tells from when they played at Huddersfield together. But when he came into that dressing room as an older pro, alongside Sam, you had Osher Williams in there as well. You know, you had all this experience and all this knowledge, and the way that they helped us as young players was brilliant. It was never preached, it was never demanding. They saw the energy in us, they saw the ability in us, and how they could use that to get success, and combine it together, culminated in promotion.
Neil Mellor scored. Preston take the lead, and that's exactly what it means to Neil Mellor to score in the West Lancashire derby.